On March 30th, 2018, Israeli military forces opened fire on Palestinian protesters along its southern border with the Gaza Strip, resulting in the deaths of nearly 24 people, making it the deadliest day in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict since the 2014 war inside the territory. Israel defends its actions, saying it was preventing a mass crossing of its southern border and protecting Israelis in surrounding towns. But the country is still being criticized by world leaders for what they are saying is the use of excessive force. International organizations are calling for a full, transparent, and independent investigation into the killings. But how did this all come about in the first place? Hi, I'm Judah with Now This World, and in today's episode, we're going to explain why the March of Return protests are happening in Gaza. To be clear, according to the international community, the Palestinian territories include the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem. For the sake of this specific story, we are only going to focus on Gaza. To understand what these March of Return protesters want, we first need to take a look back at a brief history of this conflict's recent origins. In 1948, the State of Israel was established. The move marked the beginning of the creation of a national home for the Jewish people in the aftermath of the Holocaust. However, the declaration sent shockwaves throughout the Middle East, launching what would later be known as the Arab-Israeli War. This period of time would be remembered and referred to by Palestinians as al-Nakba, or the catastrophe. The 1948 war sparked a refugee crisis. It uprooted nearly 700,000 Palestinians from their homes, forcing them to seek refuge in other Arab nations. More than 7 million Palestinians are refugees today, if you count those displaced by the 1948 war and their descendants. And they contend that they have the right to return to their ancestral towns and villages. Some of those refugees settled in Gaza, which was taken over by Egypt during the war. According to the United Nations, about 1.3 million people living in Gaza are Palestinian refugees. Egypt controlled Gaza until the Six-Day War broke out in 1967. During this war, Israel took control of Gaza and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, among other territories. Israel ruled Gaza for the years to come. Israeli troops were stationed there, and the government allowed Israelis to settle in the strip of land, until 2005. Then Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon agreed to withdraw troops from Gaza and forcibly remove settlers from the land. In 2006, elections were held in the Palestinian territory, and the victor, Hamas, a group considered by Israel, the United States, and the European Union to be a terrorist organization. Israel considers Hamas a terrorist organization because the group has been known to call for the total destruction of Israel altogether. While the political wing of Hamas runs the territory and has set up social services and food banks for those in Gaza, the armed militant wing called the Ayaz al-Din al-Qassam's Brigade has consistently and indiscriminately launched missiles across Israel's border. This is why, beginning in 2007, Israel imposed a harsh blockade on the strip of land, restricting all access to the territory by land, air, and sea. The move cut off the flow of goods and supplies to the nearly 2 million people living there, which brings us back to the current protest. On the morning of March 30th, Palestinian organizers bussed men, women, and children near the Israeli-Gazan border to begin 6 weeks of peaceful protest. These demonstrations, organized to begin on the 42nd anniversary of what Palestinians call Land Day, were supposed to take place 700 yards away from the border. Land Day rallies commemorate the events of March 30th, 1976, when Israeli forces shot and killed 6 Arab citizens of Israel during strikes by Palestinian citizens meant to protest the Israeli government's confiscation of thousands of acres of Palestinian land in the Galilee region. Then on the last day of the 6-week protest, a day Palestinians call al-Nakba, protesters planned to march closer towards the Israeli border. The gathering put Israel on edge because they say they were unsure whether protesters or members of the brigade would attempt to cross their border. Before the demonstrations even began, Israel said that protests were dangerous and blamed Hamas for any violence that might occur. And even though Palestinian organizers warned protesters to stay away from getting too close to the Israeli border, some did anyway. As hundreds of activists gathered near the frontier of the border, a small group began throwing stones, firebombs, and setting fire to tires. That's when the Israelis said they responded with riot-controlling methods, including snipers who began firing on demonstrators. According to Palestinian officials, at least 21 protesters have been killed and over 750 have been shot by Israeli soldiers. Israel claims its soldiers reacted proportionately, saying they prevented a mass breach of its southern border. The military claims that some of those shot during the protests had shot at Israeli soldiers. The military also accuses Hamas of, quote, cynically exploiting women and children by sending them to the front lines. Hamas has rejected these claims, saying it was, quote, lies aimed at justifying the massacres. Videos captured by Palestinians near the border have raised concerns of excessive use of force by the military. This video shows a man running holding a tire, seemingly not posing a threat to soldiers, and goes on to show him being shot by an Israeli sniper. Human Rights Watch, a leading NGO, says that the killings were, quote, unlawful, calculated, and even asserted that a senior Israeli official gave soldiers permission to use live ammunition against unarmed demonstrators. The international community, including the United Nations and the European Union, have called for a transparent and independent investigation into the military's use of force. But so far, Israel has rejected these requests, saying its soldiers, quote, did what needed to be done. Protests are scheduled to continue until May, and as can be expected, tensions will remain high. We will be sure to monitor the situation and bring you updates as this story develops.